There's a moment, quiet, sharp, defining, where you stop chasing, explaining, showing up for people who only see you when it's convenient. That moment, that's not bitterness, that's not drama, that's power. Because when you pull back, not out of anger, but out of clarity, everything starts to shift. And they feel it. You bet they feel it. Your absence, your silence, your energy withdrawal, it's louder than anything you ever said trying to prove your worth. Pulling back is not a punishment. It's not petty. It's precision. It's the mature decision to stop pouring into cups with holes, to stop showing up in rooms that don't clap when you speak life. It's realizing you've been auditioning for roles you already own. And the people around you, they were so used to your light, they started thinking they're the source. But the moment you step back, fully, completely, unapologetically, they remember who created the atmosphere. They remember who carried the vibe, the wisdom, the support. And suddenly, silence becomes your strongest statement. Too many people have been conditioned to believe that presence equals love, that the more available you are, the more value you hold. But that's a lie, built for those who benefit from your burnout. Because the truth is, when you're always available, your energy becomes background noise. It gets taken for granted. People assume you'll always be there, always say yes, always carry the weight, and when you finally stop, a pullback is not a retreat, it's a reset. It's you stepping into the kind of self-awareness that says, I'm done performing. I'm done convincing. I'm done overcompensating for other people's lack of emotional maturity. That's where the shift starts. Not with a scream, not with a breakdown, but with a calm exit. One that leaves a question mark in their minds and peace in your soul. You want them to miss you? Stop being everywhere all the time. Stop showing up for people who don't even notice when you're hurting. Stop explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. People only start looking for what they thought would always be there once it's gone. And let's be clear, you're not walking away to teach them a lesson. You're walking away because you finally learned yours. This is the year you stop pouring into the wrong wells. The year you start using your silence as strategy, not to get attention, but to reclaim your own. Your pullback is a sacred act. It's the pause that resets your power. It's the space that detoxes your emotional system. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is nothing. Say nothing, explain nothing, just move, just vanish. Just redirect that love, that time, that energy back into yourself. When you pull back, the game changes. Suddenly they have to face what you've always felt, the imbalance, the indifference, the emotional laziness. They feel the shift not just in your words, but in your absence. And that absence, it starts echoing in places where your presence used to fill the gaps. That's when they realize you weren't just there, you were the glue. You were the safe place. You were the energy that held it all together while they got too comfortable. But this time, you ever notice how peace feels like power when you stop explaining your silence? That's because your nervous system knows when you're finally in alignment. No more fake smiles, no more forced conversations, no more pretending you're okay being the only one showing up. The pullback isn't passive, it's potent. It's focused. It's you choosing to let your energy speak louder than your words ever could. When you stop overextending yourself for people who barely stretched for you, you start noticing how much life you were wasting. You see where the energy leaks were. You see who only showed up when you were useful, not when you were human. And the best part? You don't even feel better. You feel free. Because pulling back isn't about resentment. It's about reclaiming the parts of you that got lost trying to be everything for everyone. Let them miss you. Let them sit with the silence. Let them realize the warmth they mistook for background heat was actually a rare fire. You don't owe explanations for your evolution. You don't need to justify why you stopped texting, stop calling, stop showing up. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is withdraw. Not to punish, but to protect your peace, your vision, your growth. They'll either rise to meet your frequency or fall away, and either way, you win. Because the moment you chose you, the moment you pulled back, you stopped chasing validation and started commanding respect. You've been overgiving for far too long. You've been pouring into people who didn't earn your energy, your time, your care. You've been over-explaining, overcompensating, over-communicating, trying to fill spaces that didn't need filling. And all of this, it's a reflection of how you've been undervaluing yourself. It's a habit you've picked up from the moment you started seeking external validation to feel seen and heard. But here's the cold truth. When you overgive without boundaries, you undervalue your worth. And it's time to stop doing that. You gave so much to people who never truly valued you. And in the process, you taught them that your presence, your energy, and your time were free. You taught them that you would always be there, always available, always willing to show up, no matter the circumstances, no matter how little effort they put in. But the reality is, you don't owe anyone that much. You don't owe anyone your fullness when they haven't even given you the decency of recognizing it. The key is not to give more. The key is to give smarter. When you overgive, you're sending a message to yourself and to the world that you're not enough unless you're doing for others. Unless you're sacrificing your time, your peace, your emotional bandwidth for someone else's comfort. And that's the trap. You start to believe that your worth is tied to how much you can give, how much you can do for others, how much you can prove your value through actions that don't serve you. But the truth is, your worth was never tied to what you give. Your worth is intrinsic. It's not earned through service. It's not validated by doing. And you finally recognize this, when you truly understand that your value isn't dictated by how much you give or how much you do for others, everything changes. You start to see the need for affirmations, to reinforce the truth about who you are and what you're worth. These affirmations aren't just positive words you repeat. They're declarations of your truth. The reminders that your value is set. It doesn't fluctuate based on how much you can give or how much you can do. Your worth is constant, it's eternal. You just need to align with it. When you stop overgiving, you stop undervaluing yourself. And that's the real power shift. You stop seeking approval from others, stop bending yourself out of shape to make others comfortable, and start becoming comfortable with your own boundaries. You stop living in the constant fear of rejection and the false belief that if you don't overgive, you won't be loved, respected, or valued. Instead, you embrace the reality that true value comes from within. You are valuable simply because you exist. Your energy, your time, your love, they're not free. They're precious, and you choose where they go. This isn't about selfishness. This is about self-respect. This is about understanding that your energy is precious and that you don't have to give it away to gain affection, to feel validated, or to feel seen. When you overgive, you put yourself in a position of weakness. You're constantly seeking approval, constantly over-delivering, and constantly sacrificing yourself to gain acceptance. But when you align with your worth, when you stand in your power, you understand that you don't have to earn love or approval. You are already worthy of it without having to bend, break, or sacrifice. The moment you stop overgiving, you start shifting the way others see you too. They no longer see you as a person they can take from whenever they need something. They begin to see you as someone who commands respect, someone who values their own time, energy, and boundaries. They start to see the shift not just in you, but in the way they interact with you. And that's when you know your affirmations are working. You start aligning with your worth, and the world starts aligning with you. You no longer chase. You no longer seek validation in the form of approval from others. You no longer bend to meet others' expectations at the expense of your own well-being. Instead, you take a step back, recalibrate, and begin to focus on your own growth, your own peace, your own needs. And in that process, you realize that the more you value yourself, the more the world around you starts to reflect that value. People will either rise to meet your standards, or they will fall away, and both are signs of growth. You can no longer be the person who constantly gives and gets nothing in return. You can no longer be the person who sacrifices their needs, their peace, and their time for those who wouldn't do the same for you. The moment you stop overgiving is the moment you start fully embracing your worth. Your affirmations reinforce this shift. They remind you every day that you don't have to prove your value. You are valuable. You always have been. When you stop giving away your energy to things that drain you and start investing in yourself, you begin to create the space for the things that truly matter. You begin to attract people who value you for who you are, not for what you can give them. You begin to build relationships based on mutual respect, reciprocity, and real connection, not based on imbalance, exploitation, or obligation. You begin to create a life that honors your worth, where your energy is spent wisely and intentionally, and where you are in control of how much you give and to whom. The real power in pulling back is not about punishing anyone, it's about honoring yourself. When you honor your own value, you stop undervaluing yourself by giving more than you can afford to give. You stop over-delivering in order to earn affection. You stop sacrificing your peace for people who would never sacrifice their peace for you. And that shift, the shift in how you see yourself and how you show up in the world, will change everything. Attention isn't love, and silence isn't rejection. These are two of the most powerful and misunderstood concepts that people need to internalize in order to start shifting their lives. So many people fall into the trap of equating attention with affection. They believe that if someone's paying attention to them, if they're responding to their messages, if they're involved in their lives, then that means they're loved, cared for, and valued. But attention isn't love, it's just attention. And too often people mistake the two, placing all their emotional weight on the number of likes, comments, texts, or calls they get, confusing it for genuine connection. But real love isn't a constant barrage of attention. Real love is presence. It's consistent but not overbearing. It's quality over quantity. Just because someone is constantly in your space, constantly texting, constantly reaching out, doesn't mean they actually see you. Sometimes it just means they need something from you. Your energy, your support, your validation. And they're using attention as a way to keep you within their reach. The truth is, when you're constantly surrounded by people or constantly trying to get their attention, you never get the space you need to truly connect with yourself. You can't hear your own thoughts and you can't feel your own feelings because you're too busy seeking validation and affection from others. The moment you realize that attention isn't love, you stop chasing it. You stop seeking the approval of people who don't truly value you. You stop looking for validation in every text, every phone call, every social media interaction. You stop measuring your worth by the attention you receive and start measuring it by how you feel about yourself. When you stop giving so much energy to seeking attention, you start discovering a deeper, more authentic version of yourself. A version that doesn't need external validation to feel whole. And that's when the shift starts to happen. Silence, on the other hand, isn't rejection. We live in a world that's conditioned us to believe that if someone goes quiet, it means something's wrong, that they're upset with us, or that they've cut us off. But silence doesn't mean rejection. Sometimes, silence is exactly what you need to create space for growth. Sometimes, silence is a signal to reconnect with your inner self, to recalibrate, and to regain your strength. When someone goes quiet, it doesn't mean they're rejecting you. It often means they're trying to hear themselves again. They're trying to clear the noise of the world and tune into their own frequency. Silence is not an attack. It's a retreat, to heal, to reflect, to think. When you understand that silence is not rejection, you stop taking it personally. You stop reading into every pause, every delay in communication, and every moment of distance. You stop believing that if someone pulls back, it's because you're not worthy of their attention or love. The truth is, when people pull back, it's often a sign that they are either figuring things out for themselves or that they need time to reset. And you have to be okay with that. You can't always expect people to show up for you in the way you want them to. Sometimes they need to be silent in order to show up better for themselves first. The moment you understand that silence isn't rejection, you free yourself from the prison of constantly needing to know what others are thinking. You stop being consumed by every unanswered text or unreturned call. You stop worrying about whether you've been dismissed, ignored, or forgotten. You begin to realize that the world doesn't revolve around you and your constant need for reassurance. Instead, it starts revolving around your own journey of growth. And that's a much more empowering place to be. This doesn't mean you should allow people to treat you poorly, nor does it mean you should tolerate neglect or emotional distance in relationships. What it does mean is that when silence happens, you don't rush to conclusions, you don't spiral into insecurity, you don't assume that it's a personal attack. You take a deep breath, create space for your own thoughts, and trust that the people who truly matter will show up when the time is right. You recognize that silence can be a tool for self-awareness and growth, not a sign that you've been rejected or abandoned. The key to navigating this is to understand the difference between people who use silence as a weapon and people who use it as a form of self-care. Some people will withdraw to punish you, to make you feel small, or to manipulate the relationship dynamics. And while that's toxic, it's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is using silence to protect your peace, to protect your energy, and to give yourself room to breathe. This is not about playing games. It's about recalibrating your own self-worth and deciding that you no longer need to chase attention or interpret silence as rejection. The real shift happens when you stop chasing after every flicker of attention and you start realizing that your own self-worth is enough. When you stop looking for people to show you love through constant messages or interactions and you start showing that love to yourself. When you stop being afraid of silence and start using it as an opportunity to reconnect with your own power and clarity. Real confidence doesn't need validation. Real love doesn't need constant attention, and real peace doesn't fear silence, it embraces it. Because silence is the space where transformation happens. It's the space where you can hear your own thoughts, align with your own truth, and build a relationship with yourself that's unshakable. It's the space where you can reclaim your power, step into your worth, and learn to love yourself deeply, without needing anyone else to prove it for you. And that's the kind of love and peace that will never need to be validated by anyone else, ever again. This isn't about punishing them, it's about giving them the space to recognize what they've taken for granted. It's about giving yourself the gift of clarity, the freedom to see who truly values you and who simply expected your attention without reciprocating. In the fast-paced world we live in, we often find ourselves being the emotional laborers for others, always showing up, always giving, always supporting. But what happens when you decide to take a step back, even for a moment? What happens when you stop showing up for everyone and start showing up for yourself? That moment is when the shift begins. You stop being the one who fills the gaps for others and start creating space for your own healing, growth, and peace. In that space, something incredible happens. You begin to hear your own voice again. You start to reconnect with your own needs, desires, and priorities. And that clarity is what allows you to move forward in a way that aligns with your true purpose, not just the expectations of others. When you step back, it isn't just about them, it's about you. It's about reclaiming your energy, your focus, your peace. It's about realizing that your worth is not tied to how much you can do for others, how much you can give, or how much you can sacrifice. Your worth is inherent. It exists whether you're showing up for someone else or standing fully in your own space, not asking for permission to exist in your own truth. But for this to happen, you have to allow yourself to step into that silence, to create that space between yourself and everyone else. And once you do, the impact is undeniable. The people who truly value you won't just notice when you step back. They'll appreciate the space you've created. They'll feel the weight of your absence, not in a punitive way, but in a way that opens their eyes to how much they relied on your energy, your presence, and your contributions. But here's the thing, this shift isn't about proving a point to them. It's about seeing the value of your own energy, your own time, and your own presence. It's about recognizing that your worth doesn't come from being needed. It comes from being true to who you are. And by pulling back, you start to align more fully with that truth. What's amazing about this process is that it gives you the opportunity to reclaim your own boundaries. So many people, especially those who are used to giving constantly, forget that their time and energy are valuable commodities. They become so accustomed to being available to others that they lose sight of what it means to be available to themselves. But when you pull back, you stop getting from a place of obligation and instead you give from a place of choice. This isn't about cutting people off or rejecting them. It's about realizing that your energy is yours to manage. It's yours to conserve. It's yours to direct where it serves you most. The absence of your presence creates space for them to reflect. It creates space for them to think about what they've taken for granted, about how often they've leaned on you without considering whether or not you had the capacity to give. This space allows them to see things from a different perspective, one where they're no longer the center of your world. And in that space, they can either rise to meet you at your level, or they can fall away. Either way, the clarity you gain is powerful. The clarity you gain about who deserves your energy and who doesn't, about who genuinely values you and who simply expects you to be there, is invaluable. You start to realize that you don't need to constantly give to prove your worth. You don't need to be the one who holds everything together for everyone around you. Instead, you begin to create a life where your energy is respected. You give from a place of abundance, not depletion. This shift requires you to trust yourself, to trust that by stepping back, you're not losing anything. In fact, you're gaining everything. You're gaining your own self-respect. You're gaining the understanding that your presence is a privilege, not an obligation. And that shift allows you to step into your highest potential. The absence you create isn't just a momentary break. It's a space for growth. For them, for you, for everyone involved. And while they may feel the absence, it's you who is truly gaining something. You're gaining the ability to focus on your own needs, your own growth, and your own journey, You're gaining the chance to reconnect with the parts of yourself that you might have neglected while you were too busy focusing on it. And in that space, you find your strength, you find your clarity, you find your power. When you create this kind of space, you also open up the possibility for better relationships to form. You're no longer giving from a place of neediness or scarcity. You're giving from a place of abundance. You're giving because you want to, not because you feel like you have to. And that's the key. When you stop giving from a place of obligation, you give in a way that is sustainable, healthy, and enriching for everyone involved. The relationships you cultivate from this space are based on mutual respect, understanding, and care. Relationships that honor who you are, not just what you can do for others. The absence you create isn't an end, it's a beginning. It's the beginning of a new chapter in your life, where you no longer overextend yourself, where you no longer sacrifice your peace for the comfort of others. It's the beginning of a life where you put yourself first, not in a selfish way, but in a way that ensures you're giving your best to those who truly deserve it. And in that space, you start to see who is really there for you. You start to see who is committed to your growth and well-being, and who is only interested in what you can provide for them. It's an awakening, both for them and for you. The absence you create is your gift to yourself. It's the gift of peace, clarity, and self-respect. It's the space where your true self can emerge, unencumbered by the expectations and demands of others. It's the space where you remember who you are, why you're here, and what you need to thrive. And when you return, you're not just giving more of yourself, you're giving more of your best, more of your truth, and more of your authentic power. There's a truth most people don't want to face, and it's this. That your time, your energy, your peace, it's all up for grabs. Let us settle in for a second. Because if you've ever felt like people walk all over you, take you for granted, or only show up when they need something, chances are you allowed it. Not because you're weak, not because you're less than, but because at some point you believed that pleasing others would earn their loyalty. That keeping the peace was more important than honoring yourself. That love meant sacrifice, and silence was strength. That the truth is, what you tolerate becomes the standard. And that standard doesn't just apply to how others treat you. It becomes the mirror of how you see yourself. Every relationship you're in, romantic, professional, family, friendship, is built on the energy you bring into it. And when you come into those relationships uncertain of your worth, people pick up on that. If you constantly overextend yourself, constantly say yes when your soul is begging you to say no, constantly accommodate at the expense of your own well-being, they will assume that's just who you are. They will assume your time isn't valuable, your energy is unlimited, and your silence means consent. You don't need to scream, you don't need to fight, you don't need to explain yourself to everyone. You just need to stop allowing what doesn't serve you. The shift happens the moment you decide to stop negotiating your value. The moment you say, I will not allow people to treat me less than I treat myself, that's when the game changes. Because now, you're no longer available for the disrespect, you're no longer emotionally accessible to the people who drain you. You're no longer bending backwards to make everyone else comfortable while you suffer quietly in the background. You stand tall, not with arrogance, but with certainty. And that energy, that's unshakable. That's the kind of energy that commands respect, not through intimidation, but through clarity and consistency. Clarity is everything. When you're clear about what you allow and what you don't, people feel it. You don't have to keep reminding them. You don't have to write it on your forehead. Your energy speaks for you. Your actions reinforce the message. You don't chase anyone. You don't beg for reciprocity. You set your boundaries, and if they respect them, you build. If they don't, you let go. Not out of bitterness, not out of resentment, but because you refuse to lower your frequency to keep someone who won't rise. It's not about being harsh. It's about being real. Real with yourself first. Because if you're constantly making excuses for someone else's behavior, constantly rationalizing their disrespect, constantly trying to carry the emotional weight of the relationship, you're not in alignment. You're in survival mode. And the longer you stay in that place, the more you teach your nervous system that dysfunction is normal, that chaos is connection, that love has to hurt. The challenge, though, is that many of us were never taught how to set boundaries. We were taught to endure. We were taught to serve. We were taught to stay small, to avoid conflict, to be the bigger person. But being the bigger person doesn't mean shrinking yourself to keep others comfortable. It means knowing your worth and holding it. Even when it's uncomfortable, even when it means walking away, even when it means being alone for a while. Because the peace that comes from honoring yourself is always more powerful than the chaos that comes from being accepted for who you're not. You have to understand that people are watching you. Not your social media, not your words, but your patterns. They're watching how you show up for yourself, how you treat yourself, how you speak about yourself when no one's listening. And they mirror that energy. So if you want better relationships, you start by becoming a better relationship to yourself. You hold yourself to a higher standard. You treat yourself with compassion and discipline. You give yourself permission to say no, to rest, to walk away, to demand more, not from entitlement. As you shift, the world shifts with you. You start attracting different energy, people who respect your space, people who honor your time, people who don't take you for granted because they see how much you value yourself. This isn't magic, it's energetic alignment. It's the consequence of choosing yourself. Not once, not occasionally, but every single day. It's the result of showing the world, not telling it, how you expect to be treated. And when you become consistent in that, people either adjust or they disappear, and either outcome is a blessing. So what are you allowing? What are you tolerating? In the name of connection, validation, or fear of being alone? The moment you get honest about that, the moment you make the choice to stop settling, you'll start to reclaim your power. And with that power, you rewrite the standard not just for others, but for yourself. Because when you raise the bar on how you treat yourself, you naturally raise the bar on what you allow from everyone else. You teach people, one boundary at a time, that you are not available for disrespect. You are not available for inconsistency. You are not available for anything less than real, grounded, mutual respect. And that lesson is one they will never forget. Energy doesn't lie. You can say all the right things, post all the right quotes, dress up the outside to perfection, but if your energy is off, people feel it. They may not be able to explain it, but they'll sense it. Your energy is your unspoken language. It's the silent message that enters the room before you do. And when you learn to master that energy, when you start living in alignment with who you truly are instead of who the world told you to be, everything starts to shift. Because people respond to what they feel more than what they hear. This is where the real shift begins, not in performance, but in presence. It's not about being louder, tougher, or more dominant. It's about being more grounded, more centered. more authentic. You don't need to prove your worth to anyone when your energy already confirms it. And this is where most people miss the mark. They try to talk their way into respect, love, or opportunity, but energy can't be faked. You might fool some for a while, but in the long run, the real ones will always pick up on the vibration behind the mask. And the ones who match your frequency, they'll feel you even in silence. When you operate from a place of inner alignment, your energy becomes magnetic. You stop chasing attention, approval, and validation because your presence speaks for you. You walk into a room and people feel your groundedness. Not arrogance, not ego, groundedness. That quiet confidence that says, I know who I am, and I don't need to be loud to be felt. That kind of energy can't be taught in a seminar. It comes from deep self-work, from choosing to heal, choosing to grow, and most importantly, choosing to show up for yourself consistently, even when nobody's watching. The truth is, most people are emotionally reactive because they haven't learned to regulate their energy. They're constantly looking for external situations to dictate their internal state. Someone's rude, they react. Something goes wrong, they collapse. But when you start to master your energy, you stop giving that kind of power away. You stop letting other people's chaos dictate your inner peace. You create an energetic boundary so strong that the outside world can swirl and you're still calm inside. That's power. That's presence. That's leadership of yourself first. You don't need to announce that you're shifting. Your evolution doesn't require an audience, because when your energy changes, people will feel it. You'll notice the ones who used to take advantage of you don't call as much. The ones who relied on your weakness don't know how to handle your strength. And that's okay. You're not responsible for making your growth comfortable for others. You're responsible for staying in integrity with yourself. And when you do that, you start attracting people and opportunities that align with your elevated frequency. Let's be clear, your energy isn't just about how you feel. It's how you move, how you speak, how you treat others, how you handle setbacks. It's in the discipline of your daily habits, the consistency of your boundaries, and the resilience in your response to life. It's how you show up when things are hard. Because anyone can be positive when everything's going right. But what's your energy like when things fall apart? That's the real test. That's where you either spiral or you rise. Your energy is also your protection. When it's clean, clear, and strong, it naturally repels people who aren't meant for you. They'll be uncomfortable around you. Not because you're unkind, but because your presence reflects back everything they haven't faced in themselves. And instead of dimming your light to make them comfortable, you shine anyway. You don't water down your truth. You don't lower your vibration to match someone else's dysfunction. You let your energy do the filtering. It's not rejection, it's redirection. The right people will resonate, and the wrong ones will fall away. Think about your energy as a frequency you choose every day. Are you choosing chaos or calm, scarcity or abundance, victimhood or accountability? Because the more you own your frequency, the more intentional your reality becomes. It's not about pretending to be happy or high vibe all the time. It's about being real, but responsible, feeling your emotions without becoming them, speaking your truth without needing to convince anyone, moving through life with clarity, purpose, and presence. Even when the path is unclear. You teach people how to interact with your energy. If you're always exhausted, scattered, overextended, they'll be surprised if people treat you like an afterthought. But if you move with intention, with peace, with presence, people will either match that energy or move out of your space. And that's the magic of alignment. You don't chase, you don't force, you don't beg, you attract. You create, you allow. You magnetize what's meant for you because your energy is rooted in self-respect, not desperation. The shift that happens when your energy changes is subtle but powerful. It's in the conversations you no longer entertain, the apologies you no longer chase, the validation you no longer need. It's in the way you stop performing and start just being. Being real, being free, being present. And that kind of energy, it can't be ignored. It creates waves in every room, in every relationship, in every opportunity you step into. Because people may forget what you said, they may forget what you did, but they'll never forget how your energy made them feel. This is where your power lives. In your energy. In the vibration you choose to bring to every situation. It doesn't have to be loud, it doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be real. When you live from that place, when your actions, your words, and your energy all align, you become unstoppable, not because you're forcing anything, but because you finally become a full expression of who you truly are. And that version of you, that's the one that changes everything without even trying. This isn't about playing games, it's not about manipulation, ego, or silence as revenge. This is about power. The kind that comes from within, not the kind you have to chase. When you learn to focus on yourself, when you let go of the need to be seen, heard, validated, or chosen by others, something begins to shift. Your silence starts to speak volumes. Your absence begins to echo louder than your presence ever did. People start to feel the weight of your energy. Not because you're forcing them to, but because your alignment is undeniable. You've been pouring into everyone else, showing up for people who wouldn't cross the street for you, giving your light to those who only show up when it benefits them. But now, the game changes. Now you stop begging to be understood. You stop explaining your worth. You stop chasing people who can't meet you at your level. You redirect that energy inward. You pour into your vision. You lock in on your healing. You move with intention. You speak with clarity. You show up as someone who is no longer available for anything less than alignment, peace, and purpose. Let them wonder where you went. Let them miss the version of you who overextended, overgave, and overexplained. Let them sit in this silence while you rise in your power. Because the minute you stop being so available is the minute they start to notice your value. Not because you said it louder, but because you finally chose yourself. This is the shift. The inner recalibration, the silent revolution. It starts with a decision to stop proving, stop performing, and start being. Your energy becomes your affirmation. Your presence becomes your standard. And without a single word, the world begins to respond differently. Not because it changed, but because you did.